Jesus. Keep in mind that what you see from like stock markets falling because of the tariffs, like this isn't even like the most dramatic impact that, you know, we're going to have to the economy. It's going to come out in job losses and places shutting down and everything too. We already saw this yesterday.
But so we're going April 2nd, but very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs. But so we're going April 2nd, but very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 20.
People on Wall Street, people on Capitol Hill were still hoping, and certainly, of course, Ottawa and Beijing and Mexico City were hoping that the president wouldn't move forward with, but now he has. I'm just going to break down exactly what these tariffs are. One is that we know that he has implemented the 25% blanket tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Those took effect this morning. But then he also bumped up tariffs on China from 10% to 20%. And immediately, we've seen some of these countries retaliate with tariffs of their own. China, for example, retaliated by announcing 15% tariffs on chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton imports from the United States. They also announced a 10% tariff on soybeans, pork, beef, and other various goods. Canada, for their part, we heard Prime Minister Justin Trudeau say that they are going to have $30 billion or tariffs on $30 billion worth of U.S. goods, and that they would impose an additional $125 billion tariffs on American goods by March 25th. All to say, look.
Damn, she's getting whatever's in the background here.
I think the silver lining in all of this is how do we, in our backyards, we've got chickens too in our backyard, how do we solve for something like this? And people are sort of looking around thinking, wow, well, maybe I could get a chicken in my backyard. And it's awesome. I agree with you.
No. I don't want to be in a country where I have to have livestock. What the fuck? No. How about no? How about we don't go back to that? Is that where we're heading back towards, is subsistence farming where we're spending hours a day producing food to survive? Genuine question. Do you think this administration believes the USA can survive with zero alliances in the current world state? Didn't you get progressively more isolated as a country this past year? Yes. So something that Trump is pushing, there's this concept called an autarky, which is the idea that a country can be fully self-sufficient and do everything on its own. Now, is it possible for the United States to do this? Yes. But the standard of living is going to be significantly lower. It's going to be significantly worse because now, instead of employing people doing highly productive work, like in, say, AI or manufacturing complex goods or delivering high-level services, we're all going to be in the coal mines or putting together widgets in a factory or doing far less productive jobs that don't require education or a specialized workforce. Like, it's just stupid. And then other countries will take over that shit. This is just a stupid way to approach an economy and in a country.
Autarky.
In the 21st century.
There are tariffs in place on Canada and Mexico, 25% from all goods from Canada and Mexico coming into the United States, and an additional 10% on goods coming in from China into the U.S. right now. And this is critical because American consumers get a lot of things from these three major trading partners, things like oil, food, electronics, and cars. And we can expect that prices on these key commodities will rise. And we just learned moments ago that the president of Mexico announced that she will be putting retaliatory tariff and non-tariff measures in place starting on Sunday. We will learn what those are. But we've already heard from China, who is retaliating with 15% and 10% tariffs on agriculture exports coming from the U.S. going into China. And also similarly, Canada has put additional tariffs in place hitting agriculture products. And that is key for American farmers here because they were hit with retaliatory tariffs in 2018, so much so that the U.S. federal government had to provide financial assistance for them. So yet again, they are taking the brunt of these retaliatory tariffs here in the U.S. And for U.S. consumers, this is coming at a very shaky time economically. Consumer sentiment fell in the month of February. Inflation is starting to heat up. And these tariffs bring a lot of uncertainty in terms of prices. And then consumers usually, as prices rise, they start to pull back. And that has made Wall Street here very nervous. You mentioned at the open there that stocks closed, markets closed, the Dow down by 650 points. Becky, wiping away all gains that were made since Trump was elected back in November.
That the president launched a study, and those are the rules of tariffs in America. And that study is finished on April 2nd. So remember, the process in America for tariffs is that the president launched a study, and those are the rules of tariffs in America. America. And that study is finished on April 2nd. So on April 2nd, the president will have all the tools in his arsenal that he wants to do to reset tariffs. So he will be addressing all of those products in Canada. The fact that, you know, Canada has a national sales tax. Another way to say it is a national tariff on our products. And we sell, you know, they import from us very little, and we export, and they export to us huge amounts. So the idea is that's going to be reset, but that starts April 2nd. Now we just, you know, people say, oh, it's only a small amount of opioids. You know, they're only killing 75,000 Americans. You shouldn't worry about that. I mean, the president is not going to take that laying down. OK, he's not. These things just have to end. And we need to see material reduction in autopsy deaths from opioid. And that's what the president is talking about.
Like, then work with people. Work with Canada. Which we all should know this is fucking bullshit. Okay, that opioids are coming in en masse from Canada. We all know this is bullshit. But let's say that this was true. Then work with Canada to fix the problem. Why would you take the most antagonistic relationship possible? This is our ally. You don't have to do this, right? Like, imagine a husband going to a wife and he like busts out the shotgun and he's like, motherfucker, I need you to take the kids to school right now. And it's like, bro, yeah, I'm their mom. I'll take them to school. You don't have to threaten me. What the fuck? This is like in both of our interests. No? Why the fuck would you bust in here threatening to kill me over some shit we both want? Like, Canada's our ally. They're like our closest fucking ally and friend. Why would we have to threaten them or bully them to get anything? It doesn't make any sense. It's so stupid. And then the idea that I have to start the conversation there. The conversation should start with, this is fucking insane. The conversation shouldn't start with, well, is threatening to tariff them as crazy of a strategy as people are saying? No, what the How have we normalized this so much that trade wars with historic close allies is like the starting point for the conversation? It's insane.
This is not a trade war. We are going to reset trade policy on April 2nd. You've got China's got huge tariffs on us, huge tariffs on everything with us. And Canada, you just talked about. Why do we produce cars in Canada? They've had an invitation. Canada.
Bro, I don't know. Ask Trump. He's the one who renegotiated NAFTA. He renegotiated it. We already negotiated once. We'd have to threaten tariffs or conquering them and taking them over as a 51st state. Anyway, like,
in Mexico had an invitation to trade with the amazing economy of the United States of America, and they have abused that invitation, and the president's going to reset that. But he's
abused their trade deal. So what? So Trump is a retard then? Can you just admit that? Say Trump was a fucking sucker who sucks shit at negotiation, and he took him for a ride. Trump was a retard, and he got outdone by a Canadian and a Mexican leader. He's a retard. Then admit that, because it's your trade deal.
Invitation to trade with the amazing economy of the United States of America, and they have abused that invitation, and the president's going to reset that. But that's April 2nd. That's not today. Today's opioids. April 2nd, I'll be here talking to you about how trade policy is going to change, and we're going to make it fair to Americans. I know people worry about short term, but we are going to bring jobs. You are never going to see the amount of production come back.
We're all working. Nobody wants the jobs of making widgets. These jobs suck. We have better jobs here. We don't want to go back to being fucking coal miners. We don't want to go back to building door handles. We got robots for that shit. We want to work better jobs now. We don't want to go back to the 1900s. We don't want those jobs. Our economy's at full employment right now. What are you talking about?
To America, then Donald Trump's going to bring back to America trillions and trillions of dollars of production is going to come back to America, creating great jobs in America. And that's why the Americans elected Donald Trump, and he's going to deliver for them.
Okay. What is this guy's background again? Lutnick? Oh, was this one of the billionaire guys? Estimated net worth of $2 billion. How are these guys allowed to be in these cabinet positions and whatever, and have this much money and this much investment? No conflict of interest on anything here, but okay.
This morning, we heard from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and he talked about how these tariffs could benefit Americans. Listen.
This is not a trade war. We are going to reset trade policy on April 2nd. You've got China's got huge tariffs on us, huge tariffs on everything with us. And Canada, you just talked about. Why do we produce cars in Canada? I know people worry about short term, but we are going to bring jobs. You are never going to see the amount of production come back to America than Donald Trump's going to bring back to America.
So Trump predicts this will be nothing more than short-term pain for long-term gain. Is that how you see the impacts on the American economy and on Americans' bank accounts?
I think what's coming out of the White House is, frankly, unmitigated nonsense, and there's not an economist alive who would defend what they're doing. But your viewers don't have to believe me. It turns out that there's a market where people bet on whether those sorts of effects are going to happen. I'm talking, of course, of the stock market. If Lutnick is right, and if Trump is right that these tariffs are going to lead to a boom in American business, then you should see the American stock market boom in response to a tariff announcement. What we saw was the stocks fell 2.5% yesterday, an additional 1.5% this morning. This is the stock market telling you we think this is absolutely terrible for American business. And remember, it's businesses that are meant to benefit here. The stock market's not even taking account of the fact that high tariffs mean you and I are going to be paying a whole lot more at the grocery store as well. So there's a lot of losers all around.
The Treasury Secretary claims that Trump's tariffs from
You and I, you don't sound like an America to me, brother.
his first term didn't affect the cost of consumer goods. But we're also hearing from the CEO of Target this morning, Brian Cornell, telling a different story. Listen.
We have the experience of President Trump's first term where the tariffs...
Oh, it's Besant. Also, guess what I just found out? Hey, what do you think, do you know where Besant worked before he got into government? He was a partner at the Soros Fund Management and the founder of the Key Square Group. Uh-oh. Soros has been on the enemy team the whole time. What?
We have the experience of President Trump's first term where the tariffs did not affect prices. And it's a holistic approach that there will be tariffs, there will be cuts in regulation, there will be cheaper energy.
Just to be clear, Trump tariffs did have a negative impact on his first term. I don't know why he's saying that, because we had to subsidize the China's tariffs on U.S. agricultural exports hit American farmers hard back in 2019. NPR's Scott Simon speaks with farmer Josh Gackel about the impacts of another round of such tariffs. According to the USDA's Economic Research Service, those tariffs caused nearly $26 billion in agricultural export losses from 2018 through 2019. So no, Trump's past tariffs have hurt us. So this idea that there's no way that they will, no, that's bullshit. They did hurt us. Also, if you want to talk about deregulation or whatever else.
Approach that there will be tariffs, there will be cuts in regulation, there will be cheaper energy.
Cuts in regulations and shit. Okay, just do that then. You don't have to do the tariffs. Just do the cuts in regulation if you want to save money. Why not just do that, right? Like we're going to give you fruit roll-ups, Tootsie Rolls, Hershey bars, and dog shit to eat. We're going to do all of this, and it's going to be great. Wait. How about, like, can we just, why do we have to have the dog shit? Like, why just, how about just the candy bars? No. We need all of it. How about, like, just, why do we have to have the dog shit mixed in with everything else? Like, if you want to deregulate or whatever bullshit conservatives always obsessed with, then fine, do it. Why do the tariffs have to be a part of that? They don't have to go together. The fuck?
We know for certain categories, like fruits and vegetables, where during this winter season, we depend on Mexico for a significant amount of supply. Those are categories where we'll try to protect pricing, but the consumer will likely see price increases over the next couple of days.
So really opposing messages there. What's the reality?
The reality is that you can't suspend the laws of economics. And the laws of economics say that when you raise costs on businesses, that is, if Home Depot has to pay more to import a washing machine that you might want to buy, it passes on those higher costs. Any argument to the contrary is just saying Home Depot...
I'm a bit behind, but bro, Starlink is the only thing some people have. Rip, I don't want you in my community. Get out. You're banned from chat. We blanket banned Starlink IPs. There was probably another option. Find it or demand it or move. Don't care.
or the washing machine manufacturers would be happy to trim their margins just because the White House says so. We know that's not how it works, and we actually have very clear evidence from the first set of Trump tariffs that these are passed through all.
Yes, thank you. True.
Almost dollar for dollar into higher prices. And it's not just imported goods you've got to look out for, because American corporations, they charge us low prices not because they like us, but because competition forces them to. But if they have less competition from abroad, they're going to start to fatten up their profit margins and charge you and I higher prices as well. So there could be.
That's true as well. I've already launched my own DGG task force, okay? Every single person that chats in my chat, you are currently being investigated in real life by the Taliban. And if you drive a Tesla, we're coming for you next, okay?
Not just direct effects on higher prices, but ripple effects throughout the whole economy.
Let's take a look at this new CBS News poll showing Americans are still not thrilled with the state of inflation even before these tariffs. A minority, 46%, approve of Trump's handling of inflation. Remember, President Trump had promised to immediately bring down prices starting on day one of his administration.
Prices, too, not inflation, right? We're one derivative removed. He didn't promise to make inflation, the rate of change, go down. He said he was going to make it a negative rate, that he was going to decrease prices. Remember that.
How's he doing on that promise?
He's doing terrible. Look, the original promise that he would bring down prices is a lie. No one ever expected that. What we hoped was that inflation would start to come down. Now, in fact, what's happened is people understood that tariffs were coming. A lot of people started buying their durable goods, or businesses were buying raw materials before the tariffs were in place. That extra demand has actually already led to higher prices, and they're going to lead to even higher prices once again. And so, yes, the cost of living is painful. An important fact that I think your viewers need to understand is normally with inflation, prices rise and then your wages rise to catch up. This kind of inflation, the inflation that's caused by tariffs, prices rise, but there's no reason for your wages to rise to catch up, which is to say this will permanently or in an enduring sense undermine your family's purchasing power.
Justin Wolfers, thank you so much for helping us understand the impacts. It's good to have you with us.
Right, Becky. I think the response from China is very sharp and it's very strategic. As Vanessa mentioned, in 2018, American farmers dealt with the hardships of tariffs. China has made this very calculated move to, again, target farmers, target people who work in food service, to target the agriculture industry. These are jobs. These are people in the United States who live in the Midwest, who live in the middle of America, the heartland. China knew exactly what it was doing. One item on the list of these various tariffs on agriculture products, tariffs that range in anywhere from about 10 to 15% in addition to what we've already seen, are soybeans. Soybeans are important here in China because they're used to feed pigs. Pigs make up the pork industry, a very important commodity, a very important part of the Chinese economy. But it's not just these tariffs. It's the language that we are hearing from the Chinese government, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The response today, it's a lot more pointed than we've heard even just days ago. Take a listen to some of the remarks we heard just earlier today here from Beijing.
If the US has ulterior motives and insists on waging a tariff war, trade war, or any other kind of war, China will fight the US till the end. We advise the US to put away its bullying face and return to the right track of dialogue and cooperation.
True. You know what do you think that there's going to be big pressure to normalize stuff like with Russia? I don't know what the sanctions look like on Russia right now, but for the United States to try to find a partner anywhere in the world on trade for energy or anything else?
Or it is too late.
None of this is truly a surprise. It's not a surprise move by Beijing, and certainly the United States isn't going to be that surprised by it. I've been talking to a number of sources who are both in diplomatic and economic circles, and the real question was, it wasn't if China was going to respond, it was when and just how strong of a response it would be. And now we have these actions from today. And Becky, as we've talked before, this very much falls in line with China's foreign policy playbook of tit for tat. You hurt me, I will hurt you back. And now China is responding in this very forceful way, Becky.
And perhaps we might have expected that from Beijing, as you rightly point out, Mark. Paula, let me bring you in. What we might not have expected 2 months ago is a tit-for-tat sort of trade war between the US and Canada. And today, Canada going so far as to suggest that it faces an existential threat from its neighbour. Walk us through what's been done out of the gate in response to these US tariffs. And Paula, what more could come from Canada?
Well, Becky, you bring up the salient point here, right? Canada has a free trade agreement that Donald Trump negotiated and signed in 2020.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello? Thank you. Have I just been missing it? Why has nobody else brought this up? Yes, this is Trump's trade deal. Yes, please. Every single time you talk about criticizing his tariffs and all these things, you need to bring up that this was Trump's own trade deal. This was his trade deal.
point here, right? Canada has a free trade agreement that Donald Trump negotiated and signed in 2020. This is not China, someone that the U.S. Had considered an adversary. This is Canada, and really it is ripping up the trade book, if you will, for what they have negotiated already with allies. So what is Canada doing? Well, it is hitting back with 25% tariffs on goods like meat and vegetables, dairy products, alcohol. Think about it, Becky. Anything in the United States, and we're talking about things like bourbon or wine or beer, will get a 25% tariff. But more than that, many provinces here in Canada, I would say the majority, will now be taking U.S. alcohol off their shelves and refusing to sell it. This is the kind of trade war that we're in for right now. We do expect to hear from Prime Minister Trudeau at 10:30, giving us more details on all of this. But I do want to give you some insight into what is already going on both sides of the border. So right now, customs brokers on the border are trying to figure out when they have a truck that comes in with their bill of shipment, what they must charge those companies that are now shipping from Canada into the United States. It is already leading to delays, but more than that, it is already changing the way businesses have basically designed all of their assembly, all of their inputs, and it is really wreaking havoc, as I'm hearing from some business owners already. Keep in mind, this morning, Becky, we have already had two top CEOs in the United States from both Best Buy and Target say that Americans will feel this in terms of not just the tariffs that the U.S. has put in, but the retaliatory tariffs from Canada and Mexico and China, that Americans will feel that in the coming days, not just weeks, but days. All of this to make clear that when we say the word tariff, what we could actually be talking about is inflation, because that is the way it's going to lead. What can Canada do next? We will find out more at 10:30. But one thing that is on the table is either adding a levy that Canada would charge more for the United States for any hydropower, gas, natural gas they take from Canada, so putting a levy on that, and also perhaps restricting supplies, which would be an incredibly serious move.
China and Canada immediately retaliate against Trump's tariffs. Mexico is next. President Donald Trump's blanket 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada took effect on Tuesday. An extraordinary action aimed at bringing America's top trading partners to heel, but it threatens to weaken the North American economy, including that of the United States, at a time of significant stress for inflation-wary consumers. Remember, inflation was supposed to be a thing we cared about a lot. All this is going to do is make everything more expensive. That's what tariffs are literally designed to do. It has to make things more expensive. The point is you make things more expensive so that domestic people can ideally compete. So, by definition, a tariff is here to increase the cost of things. And since it's a blanket tariff, it will increase the cost of everything. Trump also doubled the tariff on all Chinese imports to 20% from 10%. Still not as high as what we're tariffing our allies on. Okay. Those duties sit atop existing tariffs on hundreds of billions of Chinese goods. China and Canada immediately retaliated with tariffs on American goods, threatening to ignite a damaging trade war. Mexico said it would announce retaliatory measures Sunday. The Trump administration said the tariffs were necessary to stem the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Remember, this is bullshit. This is just a reason given so that they have the legal justification for the president to act unilaterally based on the National Emergencies Act. However, the reality is Trump just wants to do economic policy, trade war unilaterally. And he doesn't want to do anything through Congress because he's an ineffective leader who cannot govern. While President Trump gave both Canada and Mexico ample opportunity to curb the dangerous cartel activity and influx of lethal drugs flowing into our country, they have failed to adequately address the situation, according to a statement released by the White House shortly before the tariffs took effect. But the tariffs come at a time when inflation remains stubbornly high. Americans and the U.S. economy as a whole are on shakier ground, as evidenced by recent data. Trump's tariffs threaten to raise the price Americans pay for a wide array of goods that are imported from the three nations, which collectively shipped $1.4 trillion worth of goods to the United States last year, according to Commerce Department data. That accounts for more than 40% of the value of all goods the U.S. imported last year. The only goods that won't face a 25% tariff from Canada are energy-related items, such as crude oil, one of the top goods the U.S. imports from there. Instead, they'll be subject to a 10% tax, although Ford just said I think he was going to do a higher export tax on those. But fresh produce, cars and car parts and electronics, including phones and computers, are among the top goods the U.S. imports from Mexico, Canada, and China that will now face tariffs between 20 and 25%. The stocks of global car makers that have plants in Mexico fell sharply on Tuesday morning. Germany's Volkswagen dropped almost 4%, while Stellantis, the maker of Chrysler and Jeep, fell nearly 7%. China and Canada hit back. Mexico is next. Beijing retaliated on Tuesday by announcing 15% tariffs on chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton imports from the U.S., according to a statement from the State Council Tariff Commission. Additionally, a 10% tariff on soybeans, pork, beef, aquatic products, fruits, vegetables, and dairy products were also imposed, it said. And China's Ministry of Commerce said it added 15 American companies, including drone maker Skydio, to its export control list, which would bar Chinese companies from exporting dual-use equipment to them. China's retaliatory tariffs followed a restrained, targeted approach aimed at causing pain to those industries that matter the most to the supporters of the Trump administration, said Alfredo Montufar-Helú, head of the China Center for the Conference Board. He noted China's tariffs give it room for negotiations to potentially avoid even more damaging tariffs down the road. Although America's economy remains resilient, tariffs come during a time of increasing cracks in the foundation. A Bureau of Economic Analysis report Friday showed consumer spending unexpectedly fell in January, and a recent inflation report showed consumer prices rebounded in January, and inflation continues to grow at a stubbornly high pace. Meanwhile, consumer confidence fell the most to start a year since 2009, and a separate consumer sentiment report last month registered the biggest decline since records began in 1978. That's a problem because consumer spending makes up more than 2/3 of America's economic activity. Friday's jobs report is expected to show growth continue to stagnate. First-time applications for jobless benefits ticked up more than expected last week, and the Trump administration is laying off thousands of federal workers, potentially disrupting local economies. Federal spending has also been curtailed, turning off access to some people's livelihoods and services. Trump's immigration crackdown also threatens home building, agriculture, and other key industries. Imposing tariffs on Canada and Mexico threatens to chill a collaborative effort to strengthen our shared border and risks starting a trade war with America's closest trading partners, National Foreign Trade Council Vice President for Global Trade Policy Tiffany Smith said in a statement Monday. I think Trump has said that he might do retaliatory tariffs on the retaliatory tariffs, so I have no clue